Hello fellow pageant lovers, I'm the Pageant Nerd and this is part 3 of my series, TPN by Request, where I tackle topics suggested by you. This one is a little bit more timely. I've been asked by a few of you for my thoughts on the rumours swirling around about a potential new owner of the Miss Universe organisation. As you may have heard, word on the street is that a Thai billionaire, Anna Jakrajuthatip, has bought or is in the process of buying the Miss Universe organisation from IMG Era for a reported $20 million. Now, a quick history lesson here. Donald Trump was the owner of the Miss Universe organisation from the mid-1990s and in a joint venture with the NBC TV network from 2002. NBC broadcast Miss Universe from 2003 until 2014, when it severed ties with Donald Trump after he made some rather offensive remarks about Mexican citizens while announcing his ultimately successful bid to become US president. But a matter of days later, Donald Trump sold Miss Universe in its entirety to IMG WME, as it was then known. I'll admit I was initially excited about the new deal, as IMG is a world-renowned agency that represents sports stars, entertainers, models, and more. But sadly, that potential was never realised. I'll get to that shortly, but I thought in this video I would cover the pros and cons of both the Trump and IMG eras, and also give you my thoughts on what I would like to see with the new owners of the Miss Universe organisation. The new rumoured owners, that is. Alright, let's get to it. Straight off the bat, I want to talk about this whole notion of it being called a Trump era. Now, yes, Donald Trump was co-owner of the Miss Universe organisation for a number of years, but a lot of the time it is forgotten that NBC was a co-owner as well. And so a lot of the good characteristics of that era are typically attributed to Donald Trump. I will go through the pros and cons as I have just said. In summary, I tend to think that the pros were largely NBC's doing and the cons were, that guy. If you notice, from 2002 to 2003, when the new NBC deal kicked in, the production qualities of the Miss Universe pageant improved dramatically. And we had pageants in Panama, Ecuador, Thailand, and the like in those first few years, and the quality of those productions was incredible. And that continued on into Mexico City in 2007 and Vietnam in 2008, when who could forget that Lady Gaga was none other than the performing act during the swimsuit competition. I tend to think that that might have been more NBC's doing than Donald Trump's. If you look at the acts that appeared at Donald Trump's inauguration compared to his predecessor and nemesis, Barack Obama, and his successor, Joe Biden. During that period, the TV distribution of the Miss Universe pageant increased dramatically and was eventually seen in over 100 countries. And yes, Donald Trump, being the PR machine that he is, garnered a lot of additional publicity for Miss Universe, but often at the expense of contestants themselves, which I will get to. But nonetheless, Donald Trump, being a figurehead for Miss Universe, certainly did give it some added publicity here and there. Another pro of that era was the increase in semi-finalists to 15 in 2003, giving more delegates a chance to compete on finals night. Over the years, it has increased to 16, 20, 21. Most recently, it's back to 16, but nonetheless, it has been great to see that increased number of semi-finalists. Now, if we go to the cons or the negative sides of that era, I would basically just have to say Donald Trump. Now, a lot of his behaviours that he became notorious for during his presidency were on full display during his time as co-owner of the Miss Universe organisation. He had family members sit on various judging panels, including eventual wife Melania, although at this point she was just his girlfriend. His eventual ex-wife, Marla Maples, co-hosted the pageant on a couple of occasions, and to be fair, she did a reasonable job. He created unnecessary drama at the expense of actual title holders, namely Miss Universe 1996, Alicia Machado, Miss Universe 2002, Oksana Fedorova, and Miss USA 2006, Tara Conner. These were just a few examples of betraying people's loyalty, something he did on a regular basis during his time as US President. Then there was the questionable use of celebrity apprentice contestants as program hosts and judges. Now, of course, Donald Trump was the host of the Celebrity Apprentice program for a number of years. Then, of course, there were the notorious Trump picks, the contestants that were personally selected by the Donald himself to make it into the semi-finals. Now, more regularly, these were European queens, and that is why we saw the likes of the Ukraine and Czech Republic make the semi-finals on a repeated basis. Then there were those offensive remarks, as I mentioned, that Donald Trump made about Mexican immigrants being rapists and drug dealers that forced the withdrawal of Miss Mexico from the 2015 Miss Universe pageant while Donald Trump was still in charge. Once he parted ways with MUO, Miss Mexico Wendeley Esparza re-entered the competition and eventually made the semi-finals. Onto other negative aspects of this era, and we saw a reduction in the speaking opportunities of contestants on finals night. And in the mid to late 2000s, we saw contestants only getting an opportunity to speak in the final question. And it became such a practice that those final questions were just seeking viral moments, and being only able to answer a single question the entire telecast put so much pressure on that single answer that we really didn't get a chance to get to know the contestants properly, apart from the pre-recorded packages that were shown at other stages of the competition. Pageants need to evolve, I don't deny that, but I definitely do miss the ability of some hosts in the previous decade, such as Bob Barker and Dick Clark, that had actual dialogue back and forward with the contestants, which were much better opportunities to get to know the contestants and really form a bond with them and to see who was really going to be a good representative of the Miss Universe organization. Moving on to the IMG era, and definitely a positive of that time, was the ability of the contestants to speak more frequently during the telecast. And this allowed us, as I said, to get to know the contestants, understand their advocacies, and just their general charm and aura, which I think is really critical to selecting the right queens and just selecting the contestants that made the latter stages of the pageant. This greater focus on intelligence and women's empowerment was definitely a welcome addition to the Miss Universe pageant by the IMG era, but it tended to go a little too far, which I will get to shortly. The number of contestants during the IMG era also increased dramatically. When they took over, there were regularly only around 75 to 80 contestants competing. By 2018, that number got up to 94. A small change in the format in 2018 and 2019 was something that I really loved seeing, and that was allowing the top 10 to compete in both swimsuit and evening gown, something that had not been done for many years, and something that did remind me of the 80s and 90s, which, as you know, is an era of Miss Universe that I truly love. Moving on to the cons, or the negative aspects of the IMG era, and I believe at the moment that they're too hung up on the story or the advocacy of each contestant. Now, that is obviously a really good aspect to have for each of the contestants to have something that they're really passionate about and making a difference in the world. But I feel that the questions that they're being asked really do go too far, asking them how that they would solve the global pandemic or who they would vote for in a specific election. I feel that these probably don't really make much of a difference, and I would rather hear the contestants talk about the advocacies that they're more passionate about, because in reality that is what they have control over. I think to ask Andrea Meza how she would deal with the global pandemic situation really doesn't have any actual consequence. I would rather hear her talk about what is important to her and how she will make a difference in the world. Something that has really bugged me, dare I say, in more recent years is the super late announcement of the venues, which clearly is a result of some very late scrambling to actually find a host city and venue. This came to a head in 2019 when Atlanta was announced as the host of Miss Universe only a matter of weeks before the actual finals night, which led to some contestants, namely Miss Russia, being unable to actually secure a visa in time. This compares to the 80s and 90s when the Miss Universe pageant announced the next year's host during the live telecast. Now, I know that in more recent years, the financial commitment to host the Miss Universe pageant is a lot greater, but there really is no excuse why venues are being announced so late. Miss World does not have that same problem. And getting to the actual pageant, whether it's hosted in the States or overseas, and unfortunately, the telecast seems to strip any sort of local flavour of the host city and host nation. If we look back to the 2016 pageant in the Philippines, it was a brilliantly produced pageant. But if you recall, on finals night, the staging and the set of the Mall of Asia Arena had virtually no hint of it actually being in the Philippines. In Bangkok in 2018, you had certain elements that indicated we were in Thailand, which is great to see. But on the whole, the stage setup is more of the focus. And if we again look at Israel in 2021, it was more around the actual LED production and the staging than demonstrating that they were in an exotic locale around the world. Another major negative is undoubtedly IMG's tendency to host the pageant on a shoestring budget, especially when it's held in the US. Again, if we look at Atlanta, that pageant itself was only just over a week long, compared to month-long pageants, again, in the 80s and 90s. On top of that, the severely reduced activity schedule meant that contestants were forced to do their own photo shoots and video shoots in hotel corridors and ballrooms while they were waiting for rehearsals to take place. The lack of activities really did restrict the ability of the contestants to showcase themselves and to give an impression to both the judges, the Miss Universe organisation, and of course us as the fans, to give an impression of how they might be as a potential Miss Universe. Last but definitely not least was IMG keeping Steve Harvey as host for 5 more pageants after his disastrous crowning incident in 2015. Of course, Steve created a lot of publicity for the pageant because of that incident, but the fact that he continued to talk about it for pretty much for the subsequent 5 pageants that he ended up hosting really did get on my nerves, as you heard in my Miss Universe 2021 wrap. You can check that out by the link in the corner. Okay, so we've gone through some pros and cons of the Trump/NBC era and the IMG era. What I would like to do now is to talk about some qualities of the Miss Universe pageant that I would like to see either reinstated, retained, or brought in for the first time. Now, this has nothing to do with the potential owners themselves. I will readily admit that I know absolutely nothing about them. What I would like to do is talk about the pageant more broadly and give you my thoughts on how I feel that the Miss Universe organisation and Miss Universe itself, the pageant itself that is, needs to continue to evolve to appeal to a global audience. I'll start off by asking, do you think that this might be the de-Westernisation of Miss Universe? As we know, pageants themselves are becoming less and less popular in Western countries, and it is the popularity of pageants in Africa, Asia, and Latin American countries that keeps pageants afloat. Now, if we look at Miss World, they have already started to forge that path because they've been hosting Miss World in other countries such as China, South Africa, Indonesia in recent years, and they seem to have acknowledged the fact that that is where the future of their pageant lies. The future of beauty pageants, at least in the Western world, as I've just said, is in a precarious state, but this is something that I find hard to understand, especially because vacuous reality TV programs continue to remain hugely popular in the Western world, and I would argue that beauty pageants have a lot more substance than the likes of certain celebrity families that really, from my perspective, don't give much to the world, whereas beauty contestants at least are trying to make a difference. Whether we like it or not, it's human nature to admire beauty. So I would argue that the Miss Universe organisation should return to some of its more traditional aspects as a beauty pageant and stop trying to forge a path that means that the contestants are trying to save the world. I don't see why contestants can't be good people that can make difference in their communities or on a more broad scale. I think there's an opportunity to reposition the pageants as something more focused on those elements to create a more well-rounded human being without going too far that they need to be changing the world with what they do and answering questions in a beauty pageant around how they will change the world, because clearly those types of questions are not really going to make any difference. Furthermore, I hope that the pageant continues to be hosted around the world, and if the rumours are true that we do have a Thai owner of Miss Universe, I do hope that it does not take up residency in Thailand or any other country for that matter. The rumours are that the Miss Universe organisation will continue to be headquartered in New York City, which is, I suppose, a good thing. But I really do appreciate the fact that pageants generally are able to move around the world from year to year and demonstrate and showcase the local flavour of a different part of the world and allow the contestants to have experiences that they can take back to their home countries once they've competed in the pageant. I think it's also a wonderful opportunity to showcase those unique qualities of each host nation in the telecast. Otherwise, it just becomes like an award show like the Oscars, which is typically hosted in the same venue each year. Miss Universe has the opportunity to travel around the world, so why not take advantage of that aspect? Pageant fans of certain countries have expressed concern that if the Miss Universe organisation comes under Thai ownership, that it might create some bias for and against contestants of certain nations. Now, I don't have anything to really comment on that because I don't have anything to reference from the owners, the potential owners themselves. I think that the Miss Universe organisation in its current form has potentially cornered itself into focusing on certain nations and maybe not giving opportunities to contestants from a much broader range of countries to reach the semi-finals, let alone win the title. I think there's become a somewhat stereotypical Miss Universe look. If you see a lot of contestants that go from other pageants to Miss Universe, their restyling tends to become very formulaic, and it's this whole straight long hair, sexy pouting and the like. If you look at Andrea Meza, for example, she underwent a massive transformation like that. Catriona Gray did the same thing. I would like to see a greater diversity of contestants being appreciated in the pageant itself and giving a broader range of contestants the opportunity to feature in the final stages. I think that Miss World does a better job of that. And as such, I hope that the nationality of a potential future new owner of the Miss Universe organisation has zero influence over the success of contestants from any nation. I do find it amusing that Thailand may now be the owners of two of the more well-known pageants in the world today. Now, Miss Grand International is a very polarising pageant, and their owner is Thai, as we probably all know, and I got into a fair bit of trouble for calling it a Big Six pageant in the past. Now, I said that that was just a temporary name. I'm probably going to steer clear of using it again in future. But it will be interesting to see if Thai nationals end up being the owners of two of the bigger beauty pageants, international beauty pageants in the world today. Of course, the owner of the Miss Grand International pageant is Thai and is somewhat critical of other pageants, even Miss Universe, and contestants themselves and even winners. It'll be interesting to see if he has a compatriot who actually owns an even bigger pageant than his. Alright, so that's about it from me for this video. I hope you enjoyed it. I just wanted to get this one out reasonably quickly because it is a rather hot topic, and I will definitely get to another video in this TPN by request series very soon, which will probably cover something a little bit more of a historic nature, which is, as you know, something that I enjoy doing a lot. Now, I know we're also getting closer and closer to Miss Universe itself, so at some point soon, I will begin to do some previews of Miss Universe 2022, coming to us from New Orleans in January 2023. Go figure. On that topic, that's probably something that I didn't mention, which I feel that is really, again, unacceptable, and that is hosting the pageant outside of the calendar year. I really hope that should we have new owners, that type of practice will come to an end. All right, that is well and truly it from me. If you enjoyed this video, please give me a thumbs up and hit subscribe. I'll be back soon with that next video in this series. But in the meantime, it's goodbye from me, the Pageant Nerd.